Hello there, my friends. Welcome back. So, today we are going to be talking about the Lay of Allwise. And this is Norse mythological lore, and it is one of my favorites. For those of you who've been following me for a while, you are probably familiar with the talk that I did on this on my podcast about the Lay of Allwise, and so I haven't listened to that, so I don't remember what I said. I think that was 6 or 7 years ago. So all I'm going to do today is I'm simply going to bring up the Lay of Allwise, and I'm going to read it, and I'm going to give you my commentary. So we'll see. You will know better than I if my understandings or my thoughts have changed. More than likely, probably what will happen is that I'm going to be sharing some understandings that are deeper than, or maybe, I'm going to expand on some of those same understandings. We'll see. It'll be interesting. So, we are talking about a battle of the wits between the god of thunder, whom you know as Thor, but whose original name was Thor, the Lord of the Mind. This is very important, because what happens between Thor and Allwise, his name Allwise tells you, this has a lot to do with the mind. And so we're going to be talking about all kinds of things, because what's so cool about this myth is that this gives us an opportunity to hear from the perspective of all of the beings, or at least many of the beings in the cosmos, about their interaction with the cosmos, which will tell us all kinds of things about elves, dwarves, men, gods, giants, the Vanir. So we get to find out what all of these beings, how they interact with the universe, and so this will tell us a lot about them. This was really important for me in the beginning, because I was more interested at that time of understanding how the universe was put together in terms of life force energy, the elements, the directions, and this myth helped me a lot with that, because it showed me things that I had already known, but explained them as all of the Norse myths do. Explains truths about the universe and truths about mysticism that that you can't find in any other traditions. But if you've studied other traditions like the Taoist or the Vedic, or other traditions that have an unbroken connection into prehistory, if you've studied any of those, and especially if you have personal experience with any of those, then what happens when you go to the Norse myths is that they flesh those out and fill in a lot of the blanks, which is what it did for me. So this is one of my favorite myths, so we're going to have some fun talking about it. So again, we have to understand who Thor is. So Thor is Thu-nar. Thu is an Indo-European seed sound, which is found in Indo-European languages, but each seed sound itself not only contains a power, but also has some deep meaning. So Thu-nar, the root Thu, is of course extremely important for Thu-nar. Thu means drop, like drop of water. It means drop of ambrosial nectar, which gives eternal life. It means drop of rain, and of course it is the first seed sound for thunder. So what happens when the thunder strikes? You hear the thunderclap. One of the first things that happens is a drop of rain will come falling down. So it is the messenger of thunder as well. It also, in my belief, goes back to the root dew, of dewdrop. And there's a whole myth about that. Maybe I'll get into that, about how the Vedic god Indra squeezes the moon, grabs the moon and pulls it down under the earth, squeezes it of all of its ambrosial nectar, which is what he feeds off of. And that is what brings out the dew in the morning. When you get up in the morning and you see drops of water on blades of grass or on trees, that was thought to have been coming from the ground, because the Indra, the god of thunder and lightning, had grabbed the moon, as he does every month, and he wrestles it down under the ground, and then he squeezes it. So the new moon is the thunder god squeezing the moon of all of its, getting all of the life force energy out of it, and then it slips out of his hands and it rises in the sky and it slowly inflates back to a full moon. Well, all of that life force energy, all of that ambrosial nectar, the soma, as the Vedics called it, or mead, as my ancestors called it, that was said to seep up through the ground onto the leaves of the plants. So the nourishing dew. This is, people have, a lot of people have a lot of limited understanding about who the thunder god really is. So if I haven't already, the name Thunar, which is Thor, is really the name of the same deity of the Vedics, and we see that in the name of the Vedic god Indra. In that we see a slightly different emanation of the thunder god. This is the conqueror. So Indra is the conqueror and the king, and his name is Thura, which is In means full, Thu means moon or ambrosial nectar, and Ra comes from both the sun and the king. So he is the king of the full moon. Now, as you know, the moon represents the mind, not the intellect. The intellect is what we use to figure things out. Most people mistake the mind for intellect. The intellect is what you need to read. In fact, the word to read in Latin is legere, comes from the same phrase in there, legere, lect. Intellect means to pick apart from among. So reading means to pick apart. You're picking out the words and figuring them out. You have to have an intellect to be able to figure things out. And most Westerners are in their intellect. In fact, many people think that they're very deep and spiritual and they will go off on all of these things. As you can see, I'm using my intellect a lot because I like to pick apart language. But that's because I'm looking for something deeper. I'm not just doing it for the sake of doing it. I'm also, by the way, I just want to be clear what I'm doing. I'm not finding words that sound the same and then smashing them together or pulling them apart. That's not what I'm doing. I know a lot of people are doing that and they think that they're accomplishing something because this word sounds like this phrase, but they have no awareness of what the actual language is and what the root of the language is. So anyway, I digress. The intellect is not the mind, and the mind is the ability to reflect the spirit. So this has to do with meditation. The moon also has to do with life force energy. It has to do with healing, with nurturing, all of those things. So this is Thunar, and Thunar is going up against a dwarf. And so this is interesting because you would think, well, what is this? Thor normally fights against giants. Why is he fighting against a dwarf? So this is a really important myth because it's actually teaching a lot, but you have to dig in underneath the surface, because what it's going to teach us is how the god of thunder and lightning, who is the protector of the mind, here this is important. Thor is the protector of humans because what is human? Man. M-A-N. That is the original Germanic word for human being. It meant both male and female. Man means moon or mind. So the god who is the protector of Man means he is the protector of the divine mind. And this means that human beings are the only creatures in this cosmos that have this reflective ability to reflect the divine mind. Only human beings can do it. And so the thunder god is the protector of the human mind, the divine reflection of divinity. That is what we are. That is all that he's doing. So we're going to see in here that once again, as the protector of the divine mind, he is going to come in and he's going to do a battle of wits with a dwarf named Allwise. So this is a dwarf who believes he knows everything. And here we're going to find out that perhaps he doesn't know everything, because if he weren't, if he were as wise as he believes himself to be, then the thunder god would not be able to outwit him. And once again, I want to take the opportunity to address the thunder god is a god of the evolved mind. I get very cranky when I hear supposed experts. You know, there's one very well-known Asatru expert, perhaps one of the biggest Asatru leaders, especially in the United States. And I heard this guy talking about Thor in ways that just infuriated me, because he knew nothing about what he was talking about. He described Thor as being somebody who didn't think things through, that he was very impulsive, sort of like a bull in a china shop, but he was there to protect the Aesir and all of that sort of garbage. No understanding whatsoever of who Thor really is. Thor is a god of wisdom, but he is also a god of spiritual awareness. He is not a god of the intellect. That is true. The reason why Thor doesn't have to sit and think about things and pick things apart, because that's what the intellect does. The reason why he doesn't have to do that is because he is deep knowledge. And with that deep knowledge, the knowledge that goes beyond words, he, like lightning, goes directly into action. But all of his actions are in alignment with his rune, which is Thurisaj, which is the rune of the boundaries within the universe, specifically to protect the human mind. So when it comes to anything that is a threat to human evolved thinking, to human evolution, Thor is right there. He's just instantaneously there to protect us. So some people, because we see him act, and we see him act decisively and instantaneously, seemingly to us, like lightning, we think, well, he must be brash and impulsive. This is the furthest thing from the truth. The first time that I connected energetically with Thunar, I won't get into the specific details, but I remember after doing a ritual to connect with him, what I felt was this incredibly deep, peaceful. I remember I was looking up in the sky, and the clouds were floating by, and I could feel this ethereal power flowing through me, but it was so peaceful. And I'm like, wow, this is Thunar? This is Thor? Because what you expect from the surface, the superficial understanding, is you would think he would be all about a war god. That's not what he is. He's not a war god in that sense. He is a god of protection. He's a protector. And, you know, the idea is when you're in the midst of a protector, what you feel is safe and warm and grounded and loved and nurtured. Because the essence of Thor is also the essence of the moon, because he is the lord of the moon. And the essence of the moon is life force energy, nurturing, just like drinking the nectar of immortality or drinking mother's milk. You know, all of these symbols have to do with the moon. So in my experience, there is a difference in terms of vibration between Indra and Thunar. Indra is the full moon, the king of the full moon, which means you've got a lot of fire from the sun. And so this is when the thunder god is completely absorbed in drinking of life force energy. His the ecstasy that he experiences by being full of life force energy, connected to all of life force energy. The net, by the way, there is a net, you know, we call it the web of weird, but there's also the web of Indra, which is the same thing. It's life force energy. It's this web of life force energy consciousness that connects everything, that there really is no separation between anything. and this is the electromagnetic force. Anyways, you can see I have a lot of thought I've done a lot of thinking about this subject, so we're going to get right into the myth here. Before I do that, I'm going to check and see if there are any questions. This is a question and answer. We've got 15 people, so again, the best way to interact with me is to leave a question, and I'll do my best to answer your question. Okay, so looking for the questions. No questions. All right. So we're just going to get straight into the teaching. So I'm just going to simply read to you from the Myth of Allwise. So let's just go ahead and do that. All right. So hopefully, I won't be able to see the little monitor here. So hopefully, I won't lose you. I'll check in every now and then. So this is from the book. Here it is. I'm reading it online, but this is from the book called The Masks of Odin by Elsa Britta Tichenel. Now, I have to say, I do like this. I do like this book because it has a lot of lore in here, a lot of mythology, and it's translated into English for me. But I have to say, I completely discard all of the editorial comments, except when there's some linguistics in there. Other than that, I have no interest in her interpretation. In fact, in my experience, most scholars really have no idea what they're talking about, because mythology is a shamanic practice that mythology is a shamanic channeling of information from the deities, from the elves, from the ancestors. And so you're not going to be able to figure it out with your intellect. In fact, again, another thing that I find humorous, if not outright frustrating, is when I'm listening to people just trying on the surface to figure things out, and it's clear to me they have no experience in, any of these practices. It is imperative to understand that mythology cannot be fully interpreted without a personal experience in a shamanic discipline that not only gives you a personal experience with these powers, but also teaches you how to interpret them from the perspective of the original shamanic teachings that go all the way back into prehistory. Modern Westerners have disconnected themselves from this understanding for at least the past 1,000 years or so, depending on where in Europe we're talking about. And because of that, we do not have the unconscious connection anymore to the symbols and the teachings behind these myths. And traditionally speaking, what would happen is that the storyteller, the shaman, the wizard, would narrate these myths or sing them, in fact, because singing them also gives you a lot of power, because the way that the songs are sung bring power to the hearer. But also, just by listening to the story, the listeners, if they were just the average layperson, would listen and they would get emotionally involved. But what would be happening is that they would be given power on an unconscious and a subconscious level, which would really empower them on a spiritual level as well. Now, what would happen after that is that the wizard would then take the apprentices in and then explain to the apprentices what the symbolism really means. So, for instance, I've talked about a lot of things where in some of these myths, it'll tell you exactly how to do Qigong, life force energy. Same thing with Taoist mysticism. The Tao Te Ching is not just this great treatise on, Zen-like wisdom. It's actually teaching you how to transform yourself with life force energy in meditation. But you have to learn how to understand the mythology, how to interpret it. So, let's go ahead and just get on with that. So I'll go ahead and start reading that, starting from the beginning. So, again, this is Thunar, Thor, and Thor is talking with the dwarf who calls himself Allwise. Now, Allwise wants to marry, or actually he's not asking for permission, he is coming to marry Thor's daughter. Now, We don't know which daughter we're talking about because it doesn't say, but we know that Thor has a daughter named, if I pronounce this right, Thrudr. In English, the name Trudy. It's the English is Trudy, but I believe in Old Norse it was Thrudr. And it's translated as strength or power. But again, if we're talking about Thor, we're talking about life force energy. We're talking about life force energy that has a symbolic connection to the ambrosial nectar of eternal life and power. This is what Thor drinks. In the Vedic tradition, it's the drink soma, which is another word for moon. So it means he drinks the moon. In the Norse tradition, he drinks mead, and mead is made from honey, and honey has always had a connection to life force energy. You know, honey is an amazing thing. It is, you can take honey in its raw form and leave it out. You can store it for thousands of years and it won't rot. I've heard stories of when excavations were done in Egypt and they found jars full of raw honey. The raw honey was still intact. So this has a lot to do again with Thor. Thor is a protective deity, but it means that the life force energy that he drinks and that he gives is very healing and very protective. So again, we could go on and on and on. This is, of course, one of my major themes and everything. So just double checking to make sure that I'm still on, and I am still online. Okay, so let's get into it. So Allwise has come to claim his bride Strength, or Trudy, Thrudr, from Thor. So Thor stops him and they have this battle of wits. And then we'll just take it from there. So Allwise says, the benches are being adorned. Now a bride shall go to her home. With great haste, it seems, no rest is awaiting at home. So what he's saying is that he's already prepared the wedding feast. He's just come to grab his bride Strength. Without asking permission, he's going to grab her and he's going to take her to his home and he's going to marry her. So we're going to find out as time goes on what this represents. But as you know, a dwarf a dwarf is a being that is composed 100% of life force energy, of prana, of chi, that has achieved self-awareness. Now, I'm going to point this out as we get down here because it's going to be here, but you have to look for it. Dwarves are the precursors of the human soul. So you, in your physical body, you have three selves. You have a higher self, which is actually a being that used to be a human that is making its way to become an elf, an ascended master, and it is your higher self that's here to guide you and give you advice. It has direct connection to the elf home. Then you have the lower self. In the lower self, you have the subconscious and the unconscious mind. Specifically in the subconscious mind, you have dwarves. Dwarves are emotional patterns that if they are held in place for long enough, they get an awareness of their own. So you create them. Now, these spiritual entities that are created out of human emotion, they can become spirits. They can become ghosts. They can become demons. They can become earth spirits. They can also become human souls. So these things are being born within you. And you have in there, in your lower self, you have a dwarf being that is sort of running the show. The king of the dwarves within you, if you want to look at it that way. And this dwarf being is making its way. It yearns to become a human soul. And so it is seeking to gain power. But now, as you know, in mythology, dwarves can be very cantankerous. So it really depends on whether or not they're in line. Now, Tolkien, the writer of The Lord of the Rings, he intuited this. Now, how much he knew, I don't know, but he intuited a shamanic truth, which is that when dwarves are disconnected from the elves, that means when your lower self is disconnected from your higher self, it rebels and it seeks to run the show, and it becomes completely obsessed with amassing energy and resources. This is, why dwarves are seen as hoarding gold. That's what that means. By the way, dragons, the dragon Fafnir is a dwarf, and that means that he is a human being, or the aspect of the human mind that has not connected to the higher self. But however, again, if you watch The Lord of the Rings, you'll see that the dwarves, when they actually connect with master elves, they bow to them and worship them, and they will do absolutely anything for them. And this represents when our lower self, our subconscious and our unconscious minds, are in direct connection to our higher self, which means that they are completely devoted to working towards human evolution. So the evolution of the soul, which is the middle self. I haven't talked about the middle self yet. The middle self is you, the conscious person that's listening to me right now. That is the soul. That is the eternal soul. So you have 3 selves, and they are all focused on the soul, your ego, your identity. And they are all focused when they are doing their job. They are all focused and committed to helping you evolve, to evolve beyond this limited human interaction and to become something greater, to become a god or to become an elf, to become an ascended master. So what we see here, as I read this now, I'm giving you background, I'll get into it, but what we see here is we have the lower self, specifically the subconscious mind, the emotional aspect of the human being, has decided that it is going to, and this is part of growth, it has decided it knows everything, and it is going to take the power of the mind, Thruth, going to take the daughter of the thunder god, and use it to, in his mind, rule the universe. So again, you can see that this is what we go through when we achieve a measure of awareness, when we achieve a measure of power. We have to run into this, and we have to then bump into another lesson about being in alignment with our soul. So you'll see more as I go on. You'll see more and more what this is. So let's keep going. So Allwise says, the benches are being adorned. Now a bride shall go to her home. With great haste it seems, no rest is awaiting at home. Meaning that he's ready. He's got his wedding ceremony all set up. He's just going to come grab Thor's daughter and go marry her. Thor says, what dastard is this? Why so pale in the face? Did you sleep with the dead last night? Meseems there is something thirst-like about you. You are not born for a bride. So what he's saying here, I mean, there's a lot of things here, but what I want to focus on here is that Thor is saying you are out of alignment. You look like a thirst. You look like a demon. That's what Thor fights. So Thor is like saying, hang on a second here. Normally I'm a big fan of human evolution. I'm a big fan of human emotions. I'm a big fan of, the human subconscious. I want to protect it and help it. But you don't look like a human being right now. You look like a thirst. You look like a troll. You look like an evil entity. And that, I don't like that. Thor says, I don't like that. What's going on here? And so he's really trying to help the human being. But he's going to address that aspect of the human being that is out of alignment and makes him look like, makes him act like just a troll. So let's take a look. I'm just going to check and make sure I'm still online here. Yep, I'm still online. Okay, so let's keep going. So Thor says, what dastard is this? Why so pale in the face? Did you sleep with the dead last night? Your life comes from your soul. So did you sleep with the dead? Are you out of alignment? Did you sleep with the dead last night? Meseems there's something thirst-like about you. You're acting like a troll here. You are not born for a bride. So I want to before I go further, it is my belief that many of the demons that are running around the world, like actual spiritual entities, many of the spirits, the ghosts, are actually dwarves. They're human, emotional patterns that have gained self-awareness and for whatever reason have escaped out into the world. And they're running around. So one of the things that Thor does is he fights those errant aspects of human awareness. So this is why it's really, we have a responsibility to follow and stay in alignment with our true self, because when we're not, we run the risk of actually creating these negative entities that go running around doing things. One other thing that practically for your life, which I can tell you not only from personal experience but from decades of observation working with people, is that when people are out of alignment with themselves and they are in denial, when they're running away from their deepest soul desire and they're acting destructively against themselves, whether they realize it or not, they are causing damage, and sometimes they don't even realize it. So it's important to understand that we are having an effect on our reality. You know, like an alcoholic will say, I'm not hurting anybody. I'm just going to go hold myself away and drink. I'm not hurting anybody. No, you are. When you're out of alignment with your true self and you act destructively against yourself, you hurt other people. When somebody is on the other end of the spectrum, if we're talking about addiction, we've got a codependent person who wants to save somebody. You know, and these are people that push their feelings down and try and people please. And when you're people pleasing with the intent of getting people to love you or accept you, and you're going out of alignment with yourself, even though you have a smile on your face, you are always causing damage to people. And you don't realize you're doing it. So these are just some examples of what happens when we're not in alignment with ourselves. So anyway, Thor sees that. Thor sees that and he stops it and he says, I see a troll in the making here. What's going on? So let's continue. Allwise says to Thor, after Thor says, you are not born for a bride, meaning you don't have the right to take power. You don't have that right. Allwise says, Allwise is my name. I live below ground and my city lies beneath stone. The wagon warrior I come to seek. Let no one break his word. So it's interesting. He's talking to Thor and he doesn't even know that Thor is right in front of him. But he says some things about himself. He says, Allwise is my name, so he believes that he is all-wise. We will find out as we go on that he is, in fact, very wise. And that he lives below ground. What does that mean? He lives in the subconscious. He lives beneath the conscious level of awareness. That's why dwarves live in caves. Because that represents living in the lower self. The cave of the human being, beneath conscious awareness. The wagon warrior I come to seek, let no one break his word. So that's very important, because when I talk to you about ritual, when I talk to you about oaths and vows, I make it I try to make it an important point to understand that you cannot break your word. When you, especially in ritual or in meditation or any kind of spiritual work, when you set a vow that you're going to do this or you're going to do that, your subconscious and unconscious minds takes that very seriously. So nowadays people will make New Year's resolutions, but they very rarely follow them. And what's interesting about that is that we think it doesn't mean anything. Oh, I broke my vow, big deal. But this is part of the reason why we live in so much chaos, because our ancestors understood that when you speak a vow, you are taking your life force energy. You are giving life to that vow, and it becomes recorded into the fabric of space-time. And so when you make a vow and you break it, you are literally, you're denying your own existence. This is why Native Americans couldn't understand why the white man would break his word. because to them it was like, wait a minute, you just put your word to something and now you broke it. How are you still standing there? So our ancestors understood that as well, and we'll get into that more. But anyways, that's why Allwise says, let no one break his word, because he lives in the realm of the subconscious where your words have that kind of power. In fact, it is words that create everything. As you know, the Old English word for magic, as I've taught you, is dwarf speak. So that could mean either that wizards were people who spoke the language of dwarves, or they spoke to dwarves, which would mean they were, with their words or spells, they would tell the dwarves what kind of magic to go create for them. So words are very important. Anyway, Allwise says, let no one break his word. Thor says, I break it though, for I as her father have the best right to decide. So he's not saying that he breaks his own word. He's saying, no, I'm breaking your word. Because what Allwise is saying is that he says, I've put this into motion with my words. Nothing can stop it. And Thor says, I can stop it. So he says he's the one that has the right to decide. Because he says, so I'll read through the whole thing. I break it though, for I as her father have the best right to decide. I was not home when she was promised. I alone among gods am marriage maker. What he means by that, I was not home when she was promised. Again, this is a human being who is making decisions outside of their own integrity. When you are in your integrity, then Thor is present, the protector of the mind. So he's saying that this decision was not made with the full mon, the full mind, the full moon. This was done out of the self seeking to create something when it goes out of alignment with the soul. So Thor has the power to break those kinds of things. Now, let's get to this, because this is, again, very interesting, because, you know, the secret, right? The secret, the New Age thing that says, you know, how people have these whole groups and books about how you can think and manifest everything you want. Well, what's missing in that is that the secret says you manifest whatever you concentrate on. That's not entirely true. There is truth to that, and you've heard me share that, especially if you focus on fear, you create it. But when it comes to manifesting that which will give you happiness and joy, when you seek to manifest something that is not what you truly want, but it's something you think you want, then Thor says, no, I have the right to not put energy towards that manifestation. I can break that. And that is represented in, you know, people who go to read The Secret or go to the, you know, the meetings. You know, there's groups where people talk about, I'm going to manifest $1 million, and I put a picture of me in a multi-billion-dollar house, and I put my picture next to a Mercedes, and I'm going to be rich, and then nothing happens. This is what's happening. This is your soul. Your soul is saying, that's not something I want. I don't care about that stuff. And Thor, who is the protector of the mind, says, I'm not going to manifest that for you. I'm going to break that. And that's because he's protecting us. So when if you're listening to me and you live in poverty and misery, I'm not talking about ups and downs in life. I'm talking about you live in misery and poverty and you can't seem to get anything going in your life. The simple answer is that you're trying to manifest things that aren't what you truly desire. You're trying to manifest what you think you want, or what you think other people want for you, or what you think you're supposed to have. And when you do that, the universe has the right to say, no, we're not gonna do that. So pain and misery over prolonged periods are a sign that you are out of alignment with yourself. I'm not talking about being a perfectionist. I'm not talking about denying your feelings. Listen, I'm going through right now one of the worst and most difficult periods of my life. Maybe someday I'll tell you what's going on. I'm having a good day today. Yesterday was horrible. Today I'm having a good day. So I'm not saying that you don't have problems in life. But what I am saying is that even if you should be doing okay, that there's really nothing going on, but you're living in misery, one thing I can tell you is that you are out of alignment with your true soul desire. The good news is you can fix that. It may take some work, it may take some effort. This is what ritual is all about. This is the only reason why I do Vedic astrology. I have no interest in looking at, frivolous nonsense. I look at somebody's chart to see what they can do, which planets, which energies, which mantras, which deities are seeking and waiting to help them manifest their deepest desires. It's the only reason I do that work. So anyway, I could go on and on, but I won't. So, Thor says, I break it though, for I as her father have the best right to decide. I was not home when she was promised. I alone among gods am marriage maker. Allwise says, who is this fellow who says he rules over the fair and blessed woman? By your bow shots far there are few who know you. Who has borne you 2 golden rings? Let me see if I understand that right. It's been a long time since I read this. By your bow shots far there are few who know you. So again, we're seeing Allwise, if I'm reading this correctly and assuming the translation is accurate, Allwise is not seeing Thor. So again, this is somebody who's out of alignment. Because when you're in alignment, you're going to recognize Thor. When you don't recognize Thor, when you think the universe is out to get you, when you think the universe is trying to stop you from having what you want. But I want that $1 million. I hear this all the time. If I just had more money. When I tell people, go after what it is that you want. I talk to people on the phone, what is it that you want to do? I want to be a hairdresser. So go do that. Well, I can't because, there's no money in that. Let me get some money first. They want to work some crappy job they can't stand. And I said, you're just hurting yourself. Go after what you want. You don't have to have a huge house. You don't have to have an expensive car. Trust me, I know. I've lived all different. I've had the big house, the big 2-story, 5-bedroom, brand new house on a half-acre with trees and dogs, and I've had all that stuff, and I was miserable. And I've also lived in a tiny, right now I live in a very small studio back house, but it's beautiful. It's peaceful. I'm very happy here. So you don't need a lot to be happy, but you do have to go after what it is that you want to do. Otherwise, you will be miserable. All right. Continuing on. Who is this fellow who says he rules over the fair and blessed woman? By your bow shots far there are few who know you. Who has borne you 2 golden rings? So he's saying, who the heck are you? Thor says, Wing Thor am I. I have traveled widely, and I am the son of Broadbeard, which means Odin. Not against my will shall you have the maiden or receive her troth. So again, troth is where we get the word truth. But truth originally meant your vow. You speak into existence, your vow. So her troth, when people get married, it's a betrothal. They give their troth, which is their commitment, their soul. They commit their soul to the other person. So anyways, Thor is telling him who he is. He's the son of Odin, and you're not going to take my daughter without my permission. Allwise says, soon shall I have your promise, though, and receive that troth. I would rather have than forego the snow-white maiden. So, okay, so Allwise, there must have been something in that exchange, because Allwise recognizes that Thor has some power. So now instead of just barging in there and grabbing power from him, he is going to then he is now determined to get Thor's permission. Now, this kind of reminds me of when we are out of alignment with ourselves. I mean, I'll give you a real clear example. Somebody's addicted to alcohol, drugs. They know they're out of alignment with themselves, but I just need one more. If I just I can handle it. Or people who, there are people who are addicted to drugs and say things like, I'm still kind of having a slight problem with crack cocaine, but, we do all kinds of things to justify being out of alignment. So here, Allwise now is justifying being out of alignment. He would rather have than forego the Snow White Maiden. So he's going to get Thor's promise. Thor does something interesting. So at this point you would expect Thor to be, how dare you, I'm going to smash you with lightning. But remember, Thor destroys giants, trolls, thyrses. He does not destroy dwarves. Why? Because dwarves are human beings in training. They're human souls that are training to be, you know, we'll find that again later on how that comes out again. So Thor is here to help. He understands this is a dwarf. So he says to Allwise, nor shall her love be denied to you, wise guest, if from every world you can give me tidings of all that I wish to know. So he's now going to make a deal with him, and he says, you're so wise, I want to hear that. So again, there's this understanding that human beings have this ability. We have this ability. He's actually talking about the power that a shaman has. And we're going to find out some of the things that you can experience as a shaman in your shamanic travels to all of the worlds. This is one of the things I love about this particular myth. Anyway, so before we get into that, I'm going to just double check, see if there are any questions. I am still online, as I see here, so that's good. Let's see if there are any questions here. Whoops, I don't want that. I want this. So, looking for the questions. How many people are online now? We've got 30 people, so we've got quite a few people on. All right, so looks like we've got some questions. Susie Jotun's wife. That's a cool name. She says, do you think someone who is disabled physically can do Qigong? Absolutely. I teach seated meditations and seated Qigong on my channel. You can go on the thunderwizard.com channel. You know, we actually have to go to the channel itself, and you know, you can type in the search bar Qigong, and there are Qigong practices that you can do sitting down. You know, at the very least you can breathe. So the short answer to that is absolutely. I teach seated meditations in the Qigong, the Celestial Qigong. So for those that are interested in my Qigong, go to qigong.thunderwizard.com. Excuse me, qigong.thunderwizard.com. Qigong is spelled Qigong. Okay. Let's see here, looking for the questions. If I don't answer your question, it means that either I don't have the answer or I don't think it's relative or something like that. So don't take it personally if I don't answer your question. Question, but I have one question before I go. What is your thoughts about what is happening in the world, all the anomalies? Well, that's for another thing. Listen. It is fun to get into all of the crazy stuff that's happening into the world, and it is fun to get into all of the what's the word I'm trying to look for? The conspiracy theory stuff and all of that. Listen, that is a lot of fun, and I do that sometimes. But listen, you create your own world. So we're going to focus on that. That really kind of is the focus of what we're saying here. So I like the question. I'm not going to get into that today, but we will look at that another time perhaps. So, all right. T6C says, does the mind encompass the soul? I wouldn't say that the mind encompasses the soul. Let's look at what the mind is. Mind, the original word for mind is the same word as the word for moon, man. That's true in the Vedic as well as in the Germanic. The moon reflects the sun. The sun is the spirit. The sun is the soul. So the mind doesn't encompass the soul. The mind reflects the soul. Okay. So Susie Jotun's wife says, so we have 3 parts of the soul? No. We only have one soul. This is our middle self, but we have 3 selves. The human being is a community of 3 different selves. We have our higher self, which is a self that is working to become an elf here to guide us. We have the lower self, which is dwarves in it. Dwarves are souls in training. And then we have the soul. The part of you that's listening to me now is the soul. That is the eternal part of you that when it leaves is going to either reincarnate as a human being or is going to exit and become enlightened, and there's all kinds of options as to what that means. But there you are a community of 3 different selves. When those 3 selves are in communication, you are able to follow through. It's important that we stay in alignment, because when we go out of alignment, that is a choice the soul makes. When the soul goes out of alignment with itself, then what ends up happening is that the lower self especially becomes affected, and you really are affecting potential souls that are coming, that are seeking to become a soul. You are potentially creating negative entities. We have a responsibility. I'm not trying to be a perfectionist here. We make mistakes. I'm saying you should go after life with everything you have and make mistakes, make them big. One of my shamanic drum teachers, would say, if you're going to make a mistake, make it big so that everybody can hear it. You never know, it might be brilliant. So I'm not saying don't make mistakes, but I am saying, to act in ways that are destructive against your deepest desires, against what makes you happy. You are potentially creating demons, trolls. Anyway, kind of went off the subject there. Was Allwise, T6C says, was Allwise seeking to marry Thor's daughter to complete himself and become human? That could be one way to look at it. He was definitely wanting to create power. I think you're on the right track there. That's up for debate. But I think you're on the right track. But the bottom line is that Allwise, whatever he represents, was going out of alignment. So that's the only reason that Thor stopped him. But I think you're on the right track there. Okay, Susie Yoten's wife says, does ritual devotions help resolve karma of breaking vows? Yes. Short answer, yes. The karma of breaking vows, well, I could get into that's a long story. But yeah, short answer is yes. All right. Chronic Fury asks me, how do I feel about Icelandic staves? First, I don't know what you mean by that. Are you talking about, I work with the Elder Futhark. I work with the Elder Futhark for all kinds of reasons, but one of the reasons is because the Elder Futhark represents the original Germanic language that all Germanic people spoke. That includes the Scandinavians and the continental Germanic tribes. All, when you go back far enough, you only see the Elder Futhark. So when you start getting out of the different Futharks, the younger Futhark and the Old English Futhark, it's not going to have the same resonance, and the reason for that is because you're now working with actual mispronunciations of the original Proto-Germanic language. So this is something, a lot of times, I get this especially from people who are from Scandinavia who want to correct me on my pronunciation. And what they don't understand is that even Old Norse, by that time, the pronunciation and the language had deviated from the original. So I got nothing against Old Norse or Old English or anything like that. I love it. But when I can, I'm always trying to go back to that original source when I can, if I can. So I think I may have answered your question there. Are goblins, Dean Nevin says, are goblins part of Norse mythology? I believe the term goblin is a Germanic word. I'm not sure that they're represented in Norse mythology. I don't know if they're another word for trolls or whatever. To be honest with you, I don't know. They're definitely in that category of spirits. Trolls, thyrses, goblins. They're in that category of earth spirits that can potentially be destructive. But I can't speak definitively on the word goblin in Norse mythology. If somebody can, that's great. Okay, so mystical times, again, put a question in there. If I don't see a question mark, I may miss your question. I do see this as a question. Mystical times. Is that like medieval times? There's medieval times and mystical times? Mystical times asks, what are your thoughts on what is taught in the Bible about the baptism of the Holy Spirit? I come from a strict Christian background. but I am going through a spiritual awakening, so this is new to me. Well, Mystical Times, you are obviously new to my channel. What I will tell you is this, because your question would launch me into a whole 3-hour thing, which we don't have time for. Go on to michaelwilliamdenny.com. Denny is spelled D-E-N-N-E-Y. And you'll see all of my books. Go and get the book, Odin Says Jesus Was a Coward. If you want to get more information on that, you can go onto my channel, the thunderwizard.com YouTube channel. Go to my actual channel and look for the playlist about that book. That will answer all of your questions about Christianity and why I used to be a Christian as well. I was a Christian minister. I went to Bible school. I read the Bible in Greek and Latin. I used to, Mormons used to come to my house and want to talk about the Bible in the Greek, and I'd pull my Greek New Testament out and I would say, "Tell me where that is." I used to preach on the street. I have nothing to do with Christianity now except to show how destructive it is. So that should probably answer your question. Anyway, so we're out of questions. So I'm going to do a little bit of ads here, do some business, and then we'll come back and do some more reading, and we'll take it from there. Okay, so we're back now. Let's see if maybe there are some questions. Maybe not. Oh, okay, I do see a question here. Yeah, Mystical Times, you were a Pentecostal minister. Yep, we had a lot in common. I wasn't Pentecostal, but I was, what do they call that? Anyway, it doesn't matter. All right, T6C says, can you talk a bit more on the relationship of the mind to the tripart self? Gosh, ask me a hard one, why don't you? The mind and the tripart self. Well, I would, I'm just talking off the cuff here, but I would have to say that the mind intersperses all three of the selves. You know, when I hear people talk about the mind, I was listening to a Vedic astrologer, and he was again just talking about his experience. Excuse me. And he was saying that, you know, the mind isn't in the brain. The mind is everything. The mind is the whole, is everything. He was trying to put to words that the mind encompasses all of it. I would agree with that. That is my experience as well. Now, I have a unique experience because in my Vedic chart I have moon in the ascendant, which means my mind and my emotions are directly connected to my physical body, so much so that I have to express my emotions physically, otherwise it can be damaging for me. So sometimes I think I'm projecting my own experience because my body and my emotions and my body and my mind are so connected. But I believe that this is true. I think that all three of the selves are connected to the mind. To get deeper than that, I'm not really able to do that, but you definitely got me thinking. Okay, so that's it for the questions at the moment, so let's get back to the actual text here. So where we left off was that Thor and Allwise had decided to make a deal. Again, if you're just coming on, the thunder god Thor is having a battle of wits with the dwarf known as Allwise. Allwise has decided that he wants Thor's daughter Thrud, which means strength. If we're talking about that, we're talking about Shakti, which is feminine energy. Specifically, this has to, if we're talking about Thor's daughter, we're talking about power that is connected to life force energy power. And so specifically Shakti. As you know, Shakti is, you know, the reason why Allwise is coming to get Shakti is because the male can do nothing without the female. We need Shakti. This is why men are seeking women, you know, and when they meet that one right woman, they say, I could win the world. If you were my if you were my wife, I could win the world, or whatever it is. So we need that Shakti. And you know, there's an old saying which sounds kind of misogynistic, but if you know understand it, you know what it means. It says, behind every successful man is a good woman, which means that in order for the male to succeed, it needs Shakti. In the Taoist tradition, the queen sits on the left. I don't know if that's true in other traditions as well, but that means she has all the power. She has all the power. His left side, she has all the power. The guy on the right, my right-hand guy, he's powerful. He's not nearly as powerful as the left hand. Whoever sits on the person's left, that's where all the power is. So Allwise is looking for that from Thor, and Thor is saying, you look like a troll to me. I'm not letting you pass. And then they start this dialogue. So this is the thunder god Thor, who is the lord of the mind, also the being that's responsible for the evolution of the human brain. He is going to help Allwise by doing that, by testing him. So they're now getting into this battle of wits. So Thor says, nor shall her love be denied to you, wise guest, if from every world you can give me tidings of all that I wish to know. Now Allwise ego, because he believes he is all wise, now he's trapped because now he's going to he's going to talk about everything he knows. So Allwise says, try me, winged Thor, and all you would ask. See what the dwarf is good for. I have traveled in all the 9 worlds and have learned something of all. So, what this means for you. So as you know, if you're a follower of my work, you know that the subconscious mind and the unconscious mind is where we do all of our shamanic journey. It is through the lower self that we are able to travel to different worlds. It is the lower self that gets all psychic knowledge. You know, that's, you know, and psychics, you know, ever notice why psychics are big? A lot of them are really overweight. It's because it's a symbol of their lower self has a lot of power and control. They're addicted to cigarettes or whatever, and they're overweight. It means their lower self has a lot of power there. It is through the lower self that we have this ability to connect to spirits, to talk to spirits, and it is through the lower self, through the navel center, that we travel outside of the body much of the time in order to have our shamanic experience. So people do all this work with I want to open my third eye so I can travel, but you already do it with your lower self. When you dream, it's your lower self that's doing all that travel. So Allwise is saying that. He says, I'll tell you what dwarves are good for. I've been to all of the 9 worlds. This means that our lower self has also been to all of the 9 worlds, and we can go there. We can go there through that power of the subconscious and the unconscious mind. All right. Thor says, tell me, Allwise, for you must know the fates of all the kingdoms. What is that earth disposed for the sons of ages in every world? Allwise, now we're going to learn some really cool stuff about the beings that live in the different worlds. Okay? Men call it earth, but the Aesir, humus, The Vans call it ways. Giants say evergreen. Elves name it growth. The aspiring name it origin. So here we're finding out about the character of the beings in the other worlds, and not only what they are, how they interact with the cosmos, but how they relate to everything, their views on everything. Anyways, very interesting. So men call it Earth. So, you know, we live on this planet Earth. That seems pretty clear. Earth is also a giantess. So a form of the mother. And as you know, some of the, if not the oldest idols that were created by human beings were Earth Mother Goddess idols. So men call it Earth. We could say men call it Mother Earth. But the Aesir, humus. So, you know, humus is soil. It's not bedrock. Soil, you know, that brown stuff you pick up, that is made up of biodegradable leaves, even like waste, animal waste. There's insects in there. There's bacteria in there. So it's fertilizer. So the Aesir could be saying, yeah, it's fertilizer. It's crap. But they're also saying that it has the ability to create. You know, we could also call it a matrix, because so the Aesir see the Earth as a matrix. Matrix can mean multiple things. You get the play on words I'm using here. The Vanir call it ways. Now, what does that mean? The Vanir call the Earth ways? Well, what does ways mean? Ways mean paths, right? Avenues, directions in which you can pass and travel along. Why is that? Because the Vanir, unlike the Aesir, the Vanir live in time and space. The Vanir are the earthly deities. They are earth spirits. They're gods, but they are part of Earth. They're part of space-time. The Aesir are not. The Aesir live in timeless perfection. We'll see that as time goes on. But the Vanir are the gods of fertility. They live on the Earth. They thrive on the Earth. They love the Earth. So they see it as a path. They see it as a place to go and do. It's where they live. It's their home as well. Giants say evergreen. So you're going to see giants are always seeing things in terms of growth, in terms of like you know, trees growing, expansion. Green is a color of expansion. So this is how the giants see it, because the giants are beings of expansion. Elves name it growth. Now this tells you about how the elves interact with human beings. The elves are only interested in helping human beings evolve, grow on a spiritual level. So they named the Earth the place of growth. It's the place, and I'm getting like this big, like they're clapping right now. Yay, he gets it. That the Earth is where human beings come to learn and grow, evolve, which means to follow your deepest spiritual path and to make the mistakes and to learn and to grow along that path. So that's why elves see it as a place of growth. The aspiring name it origin. Who are the aspiring? Who is it that aspires to be human? The dwarves. The dwarves are, this is so interesting. Again, the myths are very clear. It's right there in the myths. It's telling us that dwarves aspire towards something greater. So what the dwarves want is they want to become human souls. They want to be divine and infinite as well, which is what the human soul is and where we are going. All right, so Thor then says, "Tell me, Allwise, as you must know, the fates of all kingdoms. What is the heaven, the lofty dome, named in each world?" Allwise says, "Men call it heaven. The gods say defense. Windmaker is he to Vanir. The giants say upper home. Elves say fair roof. The dripping hall is it to dwarves." So this tells us a lot. Men call it heaven because we live on earth, and we look towards the heavens. It's something we aspire towards. The gods call heaven defense. That sounds kind of strange. How is heaven defense? What does that mean? Well, as you know, there are only two worlds. Let me see if I can find it. Let's get to that. So we have to understand what the 8 worlds are, the 9 worlds, the 8 external worlds. Let me see if I can find it here. Is this the 9 worlds? So Asgard, which is the fort of the celestial gods, is in the northeast. There's only one other place that's called a fort, or yard, or guard. There's Asgard and there's Midgard. That means those are worlds that have a protective barrier around them. They have a defensive wall to protect them from the other worlds. So the Asgardians, the celestial deities, see heaven as a place of refuge from what? From space-time, because space-time denotes decay, imperfection. The Vanir love that. The Vanir love living in space-time. That's why they're the elder gods, because they live in space-time. They're not the elder gods because they were the first gods that were worshipped. They're the elder gods because they actually experience time. The Aesir are no more, in terms of linear time, they're no more older or younger than the Vanir. They live in timeless perfection, and they protect that in heaven. They defend it. They don't want to live in space-time. They want to be, of course they do a little bit. They're just barely into the space-time vibration, but they're trying to protect themselves from it. So that's why heaven is a defense for them. Okay, so wind maker is he, meaning heaven, to Vanir. So they're personifying heaven as a person, as a he. So wind maker is what the Vanir call heaven. What does that tell you? That tells you that the Vanir, you're going to see this, the Vanir travel by means of wind. So the Vanir are spirits, but they're earth spirits. So wind is a herald that a Vanir spirit has arrived. An earth spirit. So we're going to find that out. This was really important for me at the time, because what I was working with at the time was I was finding the connection of the 5 elements between multiple traditions. And so I was making the connection that the metal element in the Taoist tradition is the same as the wind element, not the ether element, but the wind element. And I placed the wind, and is placed in the west there. Metal is placed in the west. Wind is placed in the west. And who lives in the west? The Vanir live in the west. And so what is their element? Their element is wind. So that means they experience everything through that element, through the element of wind. The giants say upper home to heaven. Elves say fair roof. The dripping hall is it to dwarves. So we can see here the difference again by placement in terms of world. So the giant world is beneath the heavenly realms. The elves are in a heavenly place, and as you know, the northwest is one of the highest places in terms of the energy of the thunder wheel. So again, let's look at where everybody is in the thunder wheel. Where are the 9 worlds? So the elf home and Asgard are the 2 highest points. Asgard is the highest. So the elves in elf home, it's basically they're right up against it. So for them, it's right there, right? And what is it that they called it? They called it fair roof. So there's basically they're banging their head up against it there. And the dripping hall is what the dwarves are. So the dwarves live in caves. They live under the earth. And so when you're in a cave, lots of times water will drip from the roof of the cave. So that again tells you that dwarves live in the subconscious. They live in the lower realm. They live in the lower self. Thor goes on and says, "Tell me then, Allwise, as you must know the fates of all kingdoms, what is the moon that people see in every world?" Now this is going to be fun. I haven't looked at this in, I don't know, a long time, so I don't know what he's about to say, so this will be interesting for me as well. Allwise says, "It is moon to men," and as you know, moon comes from the word man, which means mind. So the moon is the reflection of the soul, so the moon is mind to men. Man, it is mind to mind, because men means the plural of man. It is moon to men, but to the gods the diminisher. The diminisher, okay, so here's how I see that. So the mind is here to reflect the spirit. The moon reflects the sun. But as you know, the light that comes off of the moon is not nearly as harsh. You know, you can look directly at the moon. You can sit out in front of the moon, I mean, without having to put anything on or put any special glasses on, because the light has been severely diminished, but it's very healing. You try and look at the sun straight on, you'll go blind. You know, if you got skin like me, if you sit out in the sun without any kind of protectant, you're going to get sunburned. So the moon diminishes the light of the sun. The mind diminishes the intense brilliance of the Aesir, because one of the things that the mind does in meditation is we can contemplate. So the way if you want to look directly at the sun, look at the moon. You're looking directly at sunlight. Same thing with the gods. If you want to experience the gods, you can experience them through meditation in a diminished fashion, because if we were to go to the celestial fort in our physical bodies, we would be burned to a crisp. It's too bright, it's too hot, it's too intense. So, moon, all right, but to God's the diminisher. Turning wheel in the house of hell. So what is a turning wheel? It represents time, right? So the mind is, for those who are in hell, for those who are in hell, the only thing they can think about is how long it's taking. Time just keeps turning and going, right? So this is one of the tough parts about meditation. If you're in hell, what is it in hell? Hell is the place for souls that are out of alignment with their soul desire. There are desires that they haven't fulfilled, so they go to the underworld, which is hell. And so when we are in hell, it means that we are out of alignment with our soul, which means we become aware of how long it takes, why all the things we don't have, and so time goes very slowly. This is why meditation, so this is where the mind is when you're out of alignment, and that's why meditation can help us, because then it brings us back into alignment. So again, we're talking about people who are out of alignment. The mind, all it does is focuses on how slow things are going, and how you don't have what it is that you really want. Giants say hastener. So the mind for the giants, and so the giants are unevolved spiritual beings. They are beings that have begun to have self-awareness, so they have an ego, they have an identity, but they are very immature, meaning they don't have the ability to empathize with others. This is why giants walk around and pick people up and bite their heads off. That's why they only have one eye. It means that they can't even see the other. They're just wrapped up in themselves. So for them, the mind, the moon, hastens their evolution. So you see the opposite. You see human beings who are out of alignment, and the mind, they feel it makes things go slowly. But for those who don't have that ability, they can't even reflect on themselves. The mind speeds things up. It means it speeds up their evolution. Dwarves call it shine. So the dwarves love the mind. Now, one of the names for moon in Vedic is Chandra. Chandra is nothing more than the Vedic pronunciation of the word shiner. It means to shine. So Chandra, when you call the moon Chandra, it means shiner. So the dwarves call the moon shine. That means they like it. It's shiny. They like shiny things. So here we have the dwarves, which are part of the mind, the unconscious, subconscious mind. It is something beautiful and nourishing for them. The elves call it tally of time. So this is interesting. Again, I'm just going off of what comes to me as I'm looking at this. Let's see. Let's ask the elves. Elves, ascended masters, help me understand what this means. So the mind is the tally of time. When you're done, after you're done at work, you look at your time card. How many hours did I work today? That you tally up. So the elves look at the mind as the way to tally up lifetimes, is what's coming to me. But it has to do with looking at the progress that you've made. So remember, that's what the elves do. The elves are all about progress. And if again, I'm getting this idea of a time card. You know, you're looking at the time card to see, what am I going to get? What am I going to get paid for my work, for the effort I put into it? So the elves are saying that they take note of, yeah, and I'm getting a really strong hit now. I'm getting really emotional about it. They take note of the hard work that you do, and they are keeping a record. So, you know, we talk about karma as being negative karma, right? You know, you're paying for all of your sins and all that. But we forget about where there's this positive thing, you know. We create positive benefits that come to us, rewards that come to us. And so the elves are like, again, I'm getting emotional. The elves, the ascended masters, are rooting for us. And they are keeping track of all of your, you know, the progress that you make. As opposed to Jehovah, who sits there and just simply takes a tally of all the mistakes you made and how he's going to punish you. It's a complete opposite. Okay, so that was beautiful. Thank you for that, ascended masters. So let's just let that sink in a little bit. I'll see if there are any questions here. Okay, so now I have to back up. I wish it would just stay where I left it. I have to back up here. Okay, so again, I'm looking for a question. So Sirius B, oh, you do have a question in there. Sirius B says, is the Shakti the Ond or the Od in Norse myth? See, I think Ond and Oth are two different words. Oth is comes from Odin. Odin, again, here's the mispronunciation. Odin is pronounced Woden. Wod is simply the power of being, you know, complete ecstasy of awareness. Like when we experience something that's really amazing, we actually go, whoa. That's Wod. Woden. En means made of. Woden is he who is made of Wod. It means that he has completely burned away everything that is not connected to total shamanic self-awareness. So Od is just Wod. Ond is something else. Ond comes from, I believe, comes from the root word of to be, which means the essence of life force energy. So that's life force energy. So Shakti, see, Shakti is the feminine power. The feminine power. So Shakti, that we have to get into a whole discussion about male and female power. There's a reason, you know, Frey and Freja, it's the same being. Frey means fertility. Freja is the power of fertility. The Shakti of fertility. So Shakti is just feminine for power. I mean, it's, again, it would take me hours to break it all down. So I don't know if I answered your question. In Voluspa, Odin's gifts owned to humans, and I was wondering what it was. No, it means that Odin gives life force energy to humans. So the life force energy that we have, again, humans does not mean just our physical body, it means mind. So mind, Mon, the moon, is also a representation of life force energy. So you could even say that Odin gives mind to humans. Anyway. So, no, I think you're mixing up a bunch of words together. This is the problem. This is one of the problems. Because we don't have, in our Germanic, shamanic understanding, we no longer have people, who have this tradition. We don't have an unbroken tradition, so we're grasping at straws trying to figure out what stuff means. Listen, this is why I just don't spend any more time reading stuff that are written by Asatruers. Nothing against them, but they're just picking at straws, because I haven't seen one who has learned other traditions that have an unbroken connection in prehistory and have been able to sync them all up. So instead they spend all this time talking about how our tradition is different. Oh, that's different. It just means you don't understand. If you honestly believe that our ancestors were sharing a science, a spiritual science, then you are going to see that same science being reflected in other traditions that have an unbroken history. So anyway, that's and I'm not trying to pick on you, Sirius B. You just asked a question, but that's what I'm trying to do here. Anyway, so Knut Karstensen says, current Norwegian word for spirit is ånd. So again, we're coming back to this idea that ånd is life force energy, spirit. He's got it rewritten, he respells it to and. I don't know if it's pronounced and or ånd. Anyway, moving forward. Dean Nevins. In your experience, are psychic abilities and intuition the same thing? Well, I mean, intuition is a psychic ability. So you used psychic abilities plural. Intuition is one of them. So I mean, making them the same thing. I mean, it's obviously, from what I'm seeing anyway, intuition is a psychic ability. So I can't elaborate on their differences because I think intuition is connected to psychic abilities. Anyway, so I'd have to have a more specific question to be able to answer beyond that. Knut Karsten says, wind is never anything good. I don't know where he's getting that from. Wind is neither good or bad. Wind can be, I mean, we need breezes. We need those ocean breezes. We need wind. Yeah, wind can be difficult. Anyway. Okay, so I see what you're trying to make a connection here with wind. Thor's home is the wind-shielded island. Does that mean undying? It's a good question. I'd have to think about that. I can't answer that intelligently right now. Okay, so TC6, a soul out of alignment is perhaps acting dwarf-like? No, because dwarves, when they are aligned with the elves, are not acting out of alignment, and dwarves in their essence are actually designed to follow the advice of the elves. They are most happy. They would rather do that. They're like dogs. Dogs live in packs. And as long as there's a strong pack leader, dogs are happy. When there isn't a strong pack leader, they fight amongst themselves. Human beings who don't know how to raise dogs, end up with dogs that pee and poop everywhere and tear things up because the dog is angry. The dog is saying, I need you to guide me, and if you're not going to guide me, I'm going to run the show. That's what elves do, that's what dwarves do when the human soul goes out of alignment. That's what happens to the dwarves. The dwarves realize that there is no pack leader because they can't see the elves. They don't respect the soul when the soul is out of alignment. They don't have any respect for it. They have far more power than the soul in terms of the physical world, so they just make your life a living hell. But they're like little children. They want to be, when you give them guidance and love, and you feed them, they are very well behaved and they do what they're supposed to do. They're very hard workers. So dwarf-like, it depends if they're in alignment or not. So Allwise in this story is he's representing the soul. I think you're kind of going down the same road I am. He's representing the soul when the soul gets out of alignment, seeking things it thinks it wants but doesn't need. So Allwise does not need Thor's daughter. He doesn't. In fact, the thing is that the power of Thrud, the power of life force energy, which is what dwarves feed off of. This is why Qigong is so important. This is why ritual is so important. Because when you do ritual and you do Qigong, you're actually feeding your subconscious dwarves, which then will go out and create your life for you. But they need to be fed first. Then they're able to go do what they want to do. So he's out of alignment in that he thinks that he needs to go and get something that he doesn't need. Because Thor will actually provide that to him if he stays in alignment with himself. So again, I don't see Allwise so much as this erring, sinful human. I see it as a representation of the human being. As the human being gains in power and knowledge, it starts to sort of step out of itself. And when we step out too far, then we end up in real problems. But we can't go through life without making mistakes. So every now and then we step out of alignment. But Thor here, as I said, Thor isn't killing him. Because if this were a troll, Thor would kill him right on the spot. Wouldn't waste any time, he'd kill him. He's not killing him, he's talking to him. He's getting him to share his wisdom. So Thor is helping to align him. So we'll get to that. Anyway, great question. I think you and I are on the same wavelength. You know, I tend to go off, you know, because I'm only looking at, you know, little bits of words here. So, but I think you and I are kind of going in the same direction. Susie Jotun's wife, you must be new to my channel. Can we call on the elves to aid us? The answer is yes. Go on to my channel, the thunderwizard.com YouTube channel, and look for the ritual to the elves. I tell you exactly how to do that. T6C, is there much of a relationship between Hell's realm and that of the dwarves? No. They are both lower realms. They vibrate similarly, but no, they are not the same realm. They don't have that connection. The underworld is, if anything, the underworld has a connection to the unconscious mind. But the dwarves are the subconscious mind. They don't. The dwarves are builders. The dwarves are creators. The dwarves are our ability with our subconscious mind to intend and to create with our intentions. That's why they're the masters of magic. The underworld is a totally different place. This is where the soul goes to realign itself, to become aware of how it's in pursuit of the illusion of the desires that it has become out of alignment. It has taken itself out of alignment. The soul also becomes aware of how it has sabotaged itself in terms of fulfilling its desires. So hell is it's a body shop. You go in there to get things realigned and fixed. So the dwarves, the dwarves aren't broken. They're just like, they're dogs. They're learning. So yeah, they make mistakes. We got to keep them in line, but that's different from what happens in the underworld. Do I think Frey and Freyja are the same divinity? I don't think it. I know it. The word Frey comes from the root pra, which is found in Indo-European. It's found in the Vedic as well. The word Prajapati is a Vedic deity. Prajapati, Pati means husband. Praja means the energy, the Shakti of Pra. Pra means fertility. So we see in the Norse tradition, in the Germanic tradition, we see an older representation of the original Indo-European religion, where the Vedics had become more sophisticated and they had taken this pra and praja and turned it into prajapati. So they're kind of getting more complicated. Whereas the Germanics were still primitive and they were representing the pure shamanic understanding. Pra means creation, fertility. Praja means the essence of the feminine power, the Shakti of fertility. So that's why they're the only gods that are seen as husband and wife and brother and sister, because they are the same energy. Make sense? But yes, they are. You can see them as different deities, but they come from the same essence of fertility. Okay, so I don't see any more questions here, so we're going to move on. Let's just keep talking here. Let's take a bit of a break, and then I'll get back into the myth, and we'll go from there. Okay, so let's keep going. First, I'll see if there are any questions. Nope. All right, so let's keep going here. Reading the Lay of Allwise. So, Thor and Allwise are in a battle of wits. Allwise wants to marry Thor's daughter, Thrud, which is translated as power. And he wants that power because he thinks with that power he can rule the world. And Thor, who fights demons and trolls, sees this dwarf, but he sees that he is out of alignment, and he sees that there's a thirst-like quality about him. So he is going to make Allwise fight on an intellectual level for his daughter, and we'll find out in the end whether or not he wins. So Thor is asking Allwise to tell him about how all of the beings in the worlds look at the cosmos. Because again, the dwarves are made of life force energy, so that's how they see things. So you notice that he's asking him things about to describe things of the material universe, and he's telling them to help us understand how the different beings see this. So again, we're seeing from people's perspectives what they are. His perspective is he sees things as energy, because he is energy, and because he builds. He is a creator. You know, the dwarves literally build everything in the universe. And the dwarves are responsible for all of the gods' magical weapons. So he sees things through magic, and what is magic? Nothing more than refocusing of life force energy of space-time in order to create. Okay, so that's where he's coming from. All right, so we just talked about did we talk about, what did we talk about? Last thing we talked about, I think we talked about the moon. So now Thor says, "Tell me then, Allwise, as you must know the fates of all kingdoms, what is the sun that people see in every world?" Allwise says, "Men call it sun, but gods say the southernmost. Dwarfs call it Dvalin's toy. Giants say ever-glowing. Elves call it fair wheel. All transparent is it to Aesir's sons. So, all right, so it's been a while since I read this, so and I know I've done a whole podcast on it, so I'm just going to see what comes up. You guys can tell me whether or not I've changed my mind about this or not. So men call it sun. Obviously, that's the word we have for the sun. Well, I could go on and on about what the sun is, but I won't take up time to do that here. Gods say the southernmost. So that's pretty interesting. Let me see if I understand what that means. It means that the gods are seeing things on Earth from a distance. Because that's, you know, like when the sun, especially in northern latitudes, when the sun is setting, you know, if you really want to get all of the power of the sun, you have to have it face south. So again, I'm just talking out of my rear end right now. I'm not really sure why the gods call it that. I'll have to think about that some more. Dwarves call it Dvalin's toy. So, what is the sun? The sun is the soul. The sun has always been and always will be a symbol of the soul. So the dwarves call the sun Dvalin's toy. It means that dwarves like to play with the soul. The dwarves are like little children. So to interact with the soul is fun for them. So when the human being is in alignment with himself, the dwarves like to play, and their play is to create. But dwarves are also beings of emotions. They are emotional creatures. In fact, they are nothing more than life force energy that has been born through emotions. It is my belief that human beings give life to the dwarves through their emotions. Through their human emotions, they create dwarves. So dwarves get a lot of fun. They enjoy interacting with the soul. Giants say ever glowing. So from the giants' perspective, you see they see everything as constant. You know, everything is about expansion and growth, and so they're seeing the sun as ever glowing. They're seeing the life within the sun, because that's what the sun is. The sun is continuously creating light and heat by compressing hydrogen atoms. So it's a continuous process. So it means that the giants are living in the moment all the time, because they themselves have just come into manifestation. They're very young beings. And I'm not talking about the giants of the... anyway, I'm confusing myself now, but you get where I'm going with that. I'm talking... Right here, I'm talking about thyrses. I'd be interested to see what the actual word that they use in this, whether it's Jotun or if it's thyrse. Anyway. Elves call the sun fair wheel, beautiful wheel. And we can talk about that. The elves love the soul as well. And so they see a wheel moves. They're seeing the soul progressing. And so for them, that is a beautiful thing to watch. All transparent is it to Aesir's sons. This is interesting. What are the Aesir? The Aesir are the celestial deities. What are celestial deities? Celestial stars in the planets, they're stars. The sun is a star. So for us to look at a star, it's blinding and white, and you know. But if you're a star looking at another star, it's like looking at yourself. They can see through it. They can see through the essence of the spirit. Anyway, I like that visualization that the celestial gods see the sun as being transparent. All right, Thor says, "Tell me then, Allwise, as you must know, the fates of all kingdoms. What are the clouds that drench with rain named in each world? Men call them clouds. The gods shower want. The Vans say wind river. Giants say weather bode. Elves, tempest boder. Hell's folks say the hiding helmet. So I'm going to focus on the ones that speak to me so that I don't end up rambling on and on like a stupid idiot. Men call them clouds, that's obvious. Gods shower want, meaning they're wanting to shower. The Vans say wind river. That's unusual. What does that mean? Well, again, the Vanir their element is wind. So what are clouds? Clouds are bodies of moisture that are carried along by the wind. So this again is showing us that the Vanir they see things from their element, which is wind. Giants say weather bode, so that's pretty obvious. Elves say tempest boder, that's pretty obvious. Hell's folks say the hiding helmet. This gives us an idea because people, the soul in hell, in the underworld, is hiding from the wrath they believe they're going to experience as a result of the actions that they've taken, because the only way that you get to hell home is if you die out of sickness and old age. What does that mean? If you die out of sickness and old age, it means that you didn't die in battle. To die in battle does not mean being killed by another person. It means that you lived fearlessly in alignment with your soul, following your deepest soul desire, and that you were willing to die at any moment to fulfill the desire of your soul. People who live like that go to Valhalla. People who die out of fear, which means that we all do it. You know, there isn't anybody listening to me who hasn't had a past life. I doubt very seriously that I'm talking to somebody who's having their very first life on planet Earth, although it's possible, but I doubt it. But what happens when we go out of alignment is we're hiding from the fear. Because living in true alignment with yourself can be very afraid. And I will say once again, one of the main things, if not the main lesson that we go through in this life, is that our main purpose is to follow our deepest joy, which is our soul desire, which is being in alignment with our soul. We will routinely and repeatedly run into tests. And the test is, do I follow my deepest joy, or do I do something that somebody else wants me to do? Or do I do something that I think will get me something that I think I need? So you're acting out of fear. So again, well, an obvious example, somebody who steals. Somebody who steals is somebody who is afraid that the universe will not provide them what they need. The only way the universe will not provide you what you need is if you are not following your joy. So if you're out of your joy, you start to experience the universe holding back from you. You're not experiencing your joy, so you start to take a belief that the universe doesn't love you, the universe isn't going to provide for you. You start to live in fear, and people who are afraid they're not going to get what they need, those are the people that steal. See where I'm going with this? I don't really know what got me onto that, but yeah, people in hell are hiding because they're hiding from the effects of their actions. And then they get used to it, and then when they get over it and they work through it, then they say, okay, send me back in, coach. I want to go back. Okay, so they're hiding. All right, so Thor says, tell me then, Allwise, as you must know, the fates of all kingdoms, what is the wind that fares so far in every world? Allwise, he is wind to men, but wafter to gods. So the gods are talking about where they're at, and the wind doesn't come at them, it sort of comes up. So it's wafting up. Nair, to the highest gods, meaning the Vanir. So again, the Vanir are not the highest gods in terms of rank. They're not the oldest gods in terms of time. They live in space-time. In space-time, those beings that are bound by space-time, the Vanir are the highest. They are an equal plane to the Aesir, but the Aesir do not live in space-time. So the Vanir call wind Nair. What neighs? A horse. What do you do with a horse? You ride it. It means that the Vanir, their element is wind, they ride the winds. Howler to giants, because giants, they operate from fear, so it's a frightening thing to hear the wind coming through. Din maker to elves. I got to be honest, I don't know. I can't come up with a good thing for that one. Whirler in the house of hell. So if you live in a confined space and a big wind comes in, it tends to whirl around. So and it creates little dust devils, little tornadoes. So again, people in hell, they're hiding. They're living out. Here's the thing about hell and the goddess Hela. I've said this before, but when we die, if we die with unresolved desires or guilt, then we take that with us to the underworld. In the underworld, depending on how intensely wrapped up we are in our narcissistic issues, we can create a hell for ourselves, meaning the Christian hell, a punishment, a place of torment. Now, the goddess Hela doesn't care. She doesn't judge you. She also won't stop you. If you need to create self-torment, she will let you do it. In fact, she'll stand by and give you whatever support you need to do it until you're done beating yourself up. So when, even a whiff of wind comes in, then the soul is going to experience it like a tornado. Everything is frightening to them. So, let's go on. Thor says, "Tell me then, Allwise, as you must know, the fates of all kingdoms. What is that calm that shall one day settle on every world?" It's been a while since I've read this. I'll be interested to see what it says. "To men it is calm. To gods the law. Vanir say end of wind. Giants say stifling. Elves a day's sleep. Dwarves call it end of being." So now I remember what this is. And this is so wonderful. Talking about death. To men it is calm. To the gods the law. So the gods live in order. The gods do not like chaos. That's why the gods fight against the Vanir, because the Vanir live in space-time. They like mistakes. They like learning. They like death and resurrection. They like change. The gods don't like that. They like things to be the same. They don't want things to change. So for them, when things are calm and nothing is moving, to them, that's the law. That's the way things should be. Things should stay the same all the time. Vanir say end of wind. So again, Vanir are only seeing it from their element, which is wind. What is wind? Again, wind is breath, the exhalation, the end of the expiration. Expiration, to expire, is a word we use when people die, to expire. So spirare means wind, but it means spirit as well. To expire means to breathe out. No more breathing. To die. So they say the end of breath, the end of wind. Giants say stifling. So the giants are all about expansion. Unchecked expansion. So death is like that. It's no more expansion. So it stifles them. They only see it in terms of, are you going to allow me to expand out to the end of the universe like the blob or not? That's the only way they see things. Elves say a day's sleep. So death for the elves is a day. So a 24-hour period, so to sleep for 24 hours. They're saying that there is no death. You may go through, in whatever symbolic way you want to look at, you're going to go through death, end of life, but just hang on, because it all starts over again. So for them, they get a day's sleep. They're looking for it. They're at the end of their journey. They started out as dwarves. They became human souls. They went through however many thousands of lifetimes to achieve wherever they went to then, and finally became an elf. The elves are like the bodhisattvas. They're at the very edge of awareness. They're about to slip into unity with the Gununga gap, where they will sleep for a day. An eternity for them is a day's sleep. Dwarves call it end of being. So dwarves are life force energy beings, and so they really do, I mean, just feel the energy flowing through your body right now. I don't know if you can feel it or not. I can. Feel the electricity running through your body. Feel, if you can feel your heart pumping, feel some kind of essence of the life in your body. The dwarves live in the eternal now. This is why meditation connects you to the dwarves. The dwarves live in the eternal now. And the way that they experience the eternal now is a sensation. That life force that you feel through your body, that is their entire experience. So for them, it's the end of that. Okay. Tell me then, Allwise, Thor says, as you must know the fates of all kingdoms, what is that sea whereon one rows in every world? Allwise, it is sea to men, the funnel's eye to gods, waves to the wise Vanir, eel home to giants, to elves staff of law, to dwarves the deep sea. So I got to be honest, this one is very deep. And I want to think about this. I'm going to think about this before I respond, because there's a lot of depth here. So let's do a little bit of business, and then I'll come back and see if I can answer that. Okay, so I did see one question there which I do want to respond to, and that question is from Susie Jotun's wife. What do you think happens to the soul if it is unaligned in Helheim but doesn't reincarnate? Well, you're making an assumption. Your assumption is that that a soul can go to Helheim and not reincarnate. I am saying to you that is impossible. So let's get rid of that assumption. Any soul that goes to Helheim will eventually reincarnate. You will choose to reincarnate. So I don't know if you're asking that because you're afraid that a soul can get trapped in Helheim, or if you actually just want to go into Helheim and you don't want to reincarnate. Yeah, I can see both. I don't know where that question is coming from. But it's just simply impossible for a soul not to reincarnate. Don't ask me how I know that. It's just the case. So the soul can, however, take as much time as it wants. So if it wants to go into Helheim and spend an eternity there, it can do that. But the way, having been there myself, I can tell you that the way to set up the energy there it's impossible to just sort of stagnate and never grow past your blocks. You may spend an eternity punishing yourself or whatever, or just taking a rest or trying to recuperate, but eventually the energy there is working so hard to get you to resolve your issues that you will. And eventually you will go, you know what, I want out of here. I want back. Not because it's a horrible place, but because our soul is wired to want to experience life. Not just in the physical body, but in general. So it's impossible, again, it's impossible for a soul not to reincarnate. I would really, if you were to ask me that and I was having a dialogue with you, which we don't have time for, I would want to ask you why you asked that question. Because that's going to tell me a lot about you. And that's going to tell me a lot about what you need to know in order to align yourself. Anyway, all right, so let's continue to move on. So we are looking at, Thor asks, tell me then, Allwise, as you must know the fates of all kingdoms, what is the sea whereon one rows in every world? Allwise says, it is sea to men, the funnel's eye to gods, waves to the wise Vanir, eel home to giants, to elves staff of law, to dwarfs the deep sea. So it is sea to men, the funnel's eye to gods is, to me, what I see is that, see, one of the things about the gods is that the gods do not relate to human life. The gods love human beings. We worship the gods because we want to be like them. The gods do not sit up there and want to be like humans. They have awe for us. But the gods are the gods. The gods do not change. They don't want to change their essence. So for them, when they look down upon us, they are really very far removed. Again, sun was southernmost, whereas for us, the sun is directly above us. They see it as the funnel eye. So, you know, we can see it now. We've got this hurricane. And when you look at it from above, it just looks like this big eye, right? So that's telling you that they are so removed that for them, the sea is where these hurricanes are formed, these storms are formed, and they can see the big eye. So that's what it is for them. For the elves, the ocean is called waves. And it says waves to the wise Vanir. So again, wisdom. Wisdom, the gods are not wise. The gods are righteous. The Vanir are wise. Why are they wise? Because wisdom comes through experience, which is only something that happens in time. You can't, you know, the more time you have, the more potential experience you have. So it means the gods, the Vanir live in space-time, and they live in time, and they're the elder gods. They've been around from the beginning. They've experienced a lot. They are very wise. But again, it shows us their element. Their element is wind. So when one of the Vanir wants to go visit the ocean, because the Vanir travel on wind, the first thing that they will only see the ocean as waves. They won't be able to see the ocean as calm, because in order to visit it, they have to visit it by wind. Does that make sense? Eel home to giants. Well, it's because giants, you know, they're not so much thinking about the ocean. They're thinking about their fellow giants, which are eels. So it's eel home to giants. To elves, staff of law. Okay, so there's a lot here. The rune Laguj. Laguj means sea, and it's, for me, it also means ocean. Ocean is the depth of emotion. We'll talk about that in a second. But there's also a deep, when you go really deep into the ocean, we're talking about Njord. Njord is the Vanir god, the god of the ocean, who is also what? Njord is also the king of the god that rules courts of law. So for the elves, they see the ocean as the realm where Njord lives, and what is interesting to them from the elvish perspective is to see again how karma plays itself out, which is what law really is. Law is just really talking about the balance, the scales, the balancing of the scales. So for the elves, that's what they're most concerned with human life, is that we align ourselves to our truest soul, and if when we're out of alignment, then to watch us get back into balance. That's what's most important to them. To dwarves, the sea is the deep sea. So interesting again. What are dwarves as I teach it? Dwarves are humans in training. The humans, according to Allwise, they see the sea as sea. The dwarves see it as the deep sea. They live in the subconscious realm, so they're under the surface. So for them, when they are in the depths of emotions, to them it's deep. We may experience emotions on the surface all the time. We've always got emotions going all the time. And sometimes our emotions become overwhelming and we have to rise above them and sort of disconnect. The dwarves never disconnect from their emotions. They are emotions. So for them, emotions are always very deep because it's their entire life. Their life force is emotions. Okay, moving on. Thor says, "Tell me then, Allwise, as you must know the fates of all kingdoms, what is the name of fire that burns for all in every world?" I don't know. It's been a while since I looked at this, so let's see. To men it is fire, to Aesir the spark that lights, wagon to Vanir, giants say gluttonous, burning to dwarfs, the swift in hell's home. So, to men it is fire. So I'm going to need some time again to think about this. While I'm doing that, I want to take a break to see if there are any questions first. Let's take a look at any questions. All right, I don't see any questions in here. So give me just a brief second to think this one over, because I want to have something valuable to say. And if I don't have anything valuable to say, I'll move on. Okay, so this one is kind of interesting and cute. I don't know how deep I can go on this one, but I do find some interesting things here. So the Thor says, "Tell me then, Allwise, as you must know the fates of all kingdoms, what is the name of fire that burns for all in every world?" Allwise says, "To men it is fire. Aesir the spark that lights." So again, Aesir are what? The celestial deities. The celestial deities are stars. What are stars? They're burning balls of gas. They are made of fire. So to them, fire is the spark that lights. It's just this, it's not like this. It's just a spark. So to them, it's they see things as from the perspective of celestial beings that give light. So for them, it's just a spark. Wagon to Vanir. Why is that? How is fire a wagon? Well, if your element is wind, what happens when you get fire and wind together? The wind will make the fire go, and then what does the fire do? The fire creates more wind. So fire actually speeds the wind up, which gives them an even faster, vehicle. So it's a vehicle. To them, fire is a vehicle. Giants say gluttonous. So giants are gluttons. Again, we could talk about projection. Everybody projects onto the world from themselves. So giants are gluttons, and they see that fire gobbles up the forest. So to them, the fire is gluttonous. Burning to dwarves, and the swift in hell's home. So I have some feelings about that, and I think that has to do with, the thing that happens in hell is that time goes by very slowly. When you're trapped in your garbage, it's like things just keep going and going and going and going. It takes forever. So fire purifies. And so when we work through our issues and we purify, ourselves, literally burn through our issues, which is what fire represents. Then when you do that, your issues resolve themselves, which we experience as time moving faster instead of going super slow. So it's saying that purification helps them to move through their issues and again gets them back into the flow of normal time. So it's a pleasurable experience. Okay, Thor. Tell me then, all-wise as you must know, the fates of all kingdoms, what is that forest that shading grows in every world? All-wise. He is forest to men, but earth-man to gods. To hell he is barrow kelp. Fuel to the giants. To elves, flower twigs. Vanir say willow wand. So, I know I had a lot of, I don't remember what I first said when I did the podcast, but let's see. Forest to men, but earth man to gods. Can't really come up with something for that. To hell he is barrow kelp. So a barrow is the grave, you know, and if you've ever been into the ocean, you know, kelp grows like a forest. So to hell, to Hela, the forest is barrow kelp, because she lives in the grave. Fuel to giants. So again, giants only see what they can consume. So for them, they, you know, and again, if we're talking about human beings, you know, the way that we chop down forests and use them just for money or whatever. For giants, they don't see any value in trees except as fuel. To elves, they are flower twigs. So to the elves, what's important to them is what the flower represents, which is the soul, right? The opening of the soul. And Vanir say willow wand. So there we go with that. Anyway, that's all I have for that one. I don't want to waste your time trying to come up with something if I don't see it. Thor, continuing on, says, tell me then, all-wise as you must know, the fates of all kingdoms, what is night, daughter of dark, named in each world? Men call her night. The gods say dark. The highest gods say the disguiser. Giants say unlit. Elves, joy of sleep. Dwarves call her dream binder. Really interesting. There's some good stuff in there. So men call her night. The gods say dark. The gods are light. They're celestial beings. So that's what they see, is the absence of light. The highest gods, the Vanir, say the disguiser, because they live in the realm of the earth. Just because things have gone dark, it doesn't mean that life has stopped moving. It just sort of, you know, it's disguised it. It's covered it over. Giants say unlit. Elves, joy of sleep. So again, we have this idea from the elves. The elves are looking to take a rest. The elves have been around for a long time. They're looking forward to that day of sleep, that eternity of sleep in nothingness. So for them, it's a joyous occasion to take a sleep, to take a nap for a little while. Dwarves call night dream binder. So if you didn't know, dwarves are also beings of dreams. How do we know this? Well, one of the oldest Anglo-Saxon written texts is about dwarves, and it's called Against a Dwarf. And in this, it teaches some magical chanting that has to do with dispelling a dwarf. And when you read it, it has to do with somebody who's having bad dreams. So dwarves, because they live in the subconscious mind, the dwarves are able to create within you dreams. So for them, night is the time they can bind the dreams together, which again has to do with your intentions. You create through your dreams, through your daydreams, through your intentions, through your. So you see what I mean? This is the realm. Everybody's looking at all this from what's important to them. Okay, All right, moving on. Thor, tell me then, Allwise, as you must know the fates of all kingdoms, what is the harvest sown by the sons of the ages in every world? I'll be interested to see what this is. Men call it grain, the gods yet to bear. Vanir say growth, giants food, elves the staff of law, in Hel's house a heavy head. I don't have anything to say on that, so I'll leave it alone. All right, moving on. Thor says, tell me then, Allwise, as you must know the fates of all kingdoms, what is that ale the sons of the eons quaff in each world? To men it is ale, but with Aesir beer. To Vanir a draught of power. Pure law to giants. Mead in Hel's house, but festive drink to Suttung's sons. I used to know who Suttung was, but it's been a while, so I don't. So I'll bypass that one. But whenever we're talking about ale or mead, we are talking about life force energy. People drink alcohol. What they're really wanting when you drink alcohol, by the way, in case we've got people who like to drink a lot of alcohol, what you're really wanting is life force energy. When you drink alcohol, it gives you the feeling while you're under the influence that you're getting this pleasurable feeling which feels the same as life force energy. You can actually get drunk on life force energy. By the way, that's why I do celestial qigong. I do it because it gets me high without any of the negative side effects. That's what you want to experience. That's why people smoke cigarettes. That's why they drink alcohol. That's why they do power plants. That's one of the main reasons they want life force energy. So that's what this is talking about. So to men it is ale, but with Aesir beer. To Vanir a draught of power. And draft, not D-R-A-F-T, but D-R-A-U-G-H-T. A draught. You know, a swig of power. Pure law to giants. The giants, again, operate purely on life force energy, which is why you can fight. This is why Thor fights against the giants, because Thor is life force energy. He wields it. So that's what they live for that. Mead in Hel's house. So mead is again another symbol of life force energy. And so in Hel's house, that's one of the things they feel parched. They feel parched from life. And so from them, life force energy is like mead. It's like, it's this nourishing drink, because mead was more than just an alcoholic beverage. It actually had nourishment to it. You know, back then, you know, if you had a tankard of mead, you were doing more than just slaking your thirst. You were also, giving yourself carbohydrates and all kinds of other things. All right, okay, so moving on. Thor. Oh wait, is there more? What's happening here? My text is running out. Let's see what happens. Thor says, in one man's breast I never saw so many staves of wisdom. Oh, this is the end. So here we come to the end. Thor says, in one man's breast I never saw so many staves of wisdom. With subterfuge I have misled you. Till daybreak, dwarf, you are still up. Now shines the sun in the hall. So we could look at this as that this is nighttime. And one way to look at this is that this is a man dreaming. And so when we're asleep, that's when our dwarves do a lot of work. And so this is the higher awareness, which is Thor. Thor represents the higher mind. Let's take a look again, if we haven't talked about it. Let's take a look at the three brains here. So we have the reptilian brain, the midbrain, and we have then the neocortex. So the reptilian brain, as you know, is the fight or flight. It's fear. It's fear, violence, procreation. You know, I've talked a lot about that. And then we have the midbrain, which is where our emotions are. And then we have the higher the higher part of the brain, which is when we are not being a slave to our fears or we're not overwhelmed with our emotions, then we are able to see things objectively because Thunar is the lord of the mind. That higher part of the brain represents Thor. So this could represent in the dream state. A human being is dreaming and what is happening. Now, when we dream, we have three kinds of dreams. We have actual shamanic experiences where we travel out of the body and we speak to spirits or the gods or whatever. Then we have nightmares, which are our fears. We're playing out our deepest fears. And then we have dreams of fantasy, our wish fulfillment dreams, where we dream about what we wish we had. So those are three main types of dreams. So here, Allwise is the subconscious mind who is trying to gain power, which is what Thrud is, to create your fantasies. So Thor comes in. So that's the midbrain. Thor comes in, the upper part of the brain, and says, let me talk to you for a little bit. Let's walk through what you've learned. So again, Thor wants the mind to evolve. So what does he do? He asks the mind to give it a task so it can grow, actually think critically, and experience. So it also says that Thor wants you to go out and shamanically experience all of the 9 worlds. And you do that through your dwarf nature as you sleep. But then the sun comes up and guess what happens? Okay, dream time is over. And so this one way to look at it is this is the life force energy, specifically the higher part of the brain, or Thor, coming in and helping the human mind evolve, helping the human mind balance itself out. Another way again to look at it is that, you know, when it comes down to it, when we are out of alignment based on when we're taking actions or we're wrapped up in things that we don't really need, that we think we need but we really don't, then we have life force energy, which is the protector of the mind, protector of human beings. He's going to come in and he's going to prevent us from taking action on that. Hey, if you want to dream about it, let's dream. Let's talk about it. Let's talk it through. But when push comes to shove, if you're going to take some action that's out of alignment, Thor's going to say, nope, too late. Shouldn't have talked so much. But again, you see, this is very different. This is a really interesting myth because, again, Thor doesn't kill the dwarf. The dwarf is coming. He doesn't know who Thor is. He's coming, and he's going to try and steal Thor's daughter without his permission. I mean, who does that? And Thor doesn't kill him. He engages with him, and he talks with him. So anyway, those are just a couple interpretations that I have of that. We could go very deep. Obviously, there was a lot of stuff I hadn't done any research beforehand, so there's a lot of stuff went way over my head. But I enjoyed that. Yeah, so let's take a look at any questions you might have and see how long have I been on here today. I've been 2.5 hours. Okay, so I don't see any questions. Nobody's asked any questions. All right, so I'm going to take a break here. What I want to once again share with you, it's the most valuable thing that I can give to you in terms of life force energy, because we're talking about life force energy. The dwarves are made up of life force energy, and Thor himself is the master of life force energy. So to experience that, the best thing I can recommend is the Celestial Qigong DVD. It's really important for not only our spiritual advancement, but also for what I've been kind of harping on lately, which is, you know, the whole point of this thing that we're doing here is to fulfill our deepest desires. One of the things that I get when I work with a life force energy, when I do energy work, is I get a feeling of joy. I get this feeling of joy, and I get this feeling of being able to see things objectively. My meditations go through the roof. If I'm doing ritual or mantra, it's like, I can't even explain what, high-level Qigong does for me. So what I do when I'm doing a ritual or really wanting to make changes in my life, what I do is I will do celestial Qigong for an hour beforehand, and then I will do my ritual. And the experience of it is, I mean, there's no drug in the world like it. Anyway, so that's one of the reasons that I do it, and I just find it interesting that we're talking about all this stuff, and we're looking at these two beings of life force energy. Allwise is a being of life force energy, and Thor is the master of life force energy. And here they are having this dialogue and relationship with each other. So anyway, that's it for that. I don't know if I have anything more to say. If you guys have any questions, now's the time to ask me questions about anything. If I can, I'll answer it. So let's take a brief break here, and I'll do some thinking about what I want to say. You come up with some questions, or we'll call it a night. Okay, so I do have a... Sorry about that. I have to turn my volume down or it does that. Okay, so I do have something I want to say before I go, which is dwarves. So we're talking about dwarves. As you know, it is my teaching that dwarves are beings that are, they're not just emotional beings, they are emotions. That all consciousness first starts as an emotion. Now we get to the point where we're elves at some point. Elves obviously have mastered emotions, but elves, understand that elves operate deeply on an emotional level. When I work with the elves, and when I feel them speak to me, it's a very emotional experience for me. So there is this myth about spirituality being devoid of emotion. You know, I won't mention any names, but there are these teachers out there that talk about enlightenment and living from the state of oneness, and and they sound like freaking robots. And it's very easy, in fact, one of the main misconceptions about Buddhism and spiritual enlightenment is it's a place of no emotion. Nothing could be further from the truth. We do need to know how to interact with our emotions consciously. But being in a place where we're divorced from our emotions is extremely unhealthy, and if I were to use such a word, unspiritual. You cannot be a spiritually evolved person without being connected to your emotions. So I can also tell you from experience that what we need to do is to be able to have all of our feelings, feel them very deeply, and not let them force us to take actions that will be destructive to us. And again, for me, the ultimate of enlightenment, if there is such a thing, is to live in joy. Because that is what the soul is comprised of. The soul is made of joy, nothing else. And how you know you are in alignment with your soul is when the actions that you take bring you joy. Now, I'm not saying that you have to be happy all the time. In fact, quite the opposite. When you take action on your joy, there's going to be a lot of challenge. You will run into fear and guilt, self-sabotage. You know, you might end up losing people in your life. You might end up going to jail, you know, by following. I mean, living from your soul can be dangerous. So I'm not saying that there aren't times where there's going to be, you know, difficult emotions. But I'm saying that the reward for following your life soul purpose is joy. And you can, even if you're not feeling joyful, you can know what it is that brings you joy. And if you don't know what it is, a lot of people don't, it means that you are out of alignment and that your intellect is working hard to keep you out of alignment because of some false belief that you have about yourself, about how either you relate to the universe or you relate to other people or even with yourself. So I'm not trying to minimize that. But the way out of it, you know, the easiest way to do it is to stop and go, what is it that makes me happy? You see in the beginning there, you see me surfing? That's what gives me joy. It's the thing I've completely focused my life around it. You know, from this job to everything I do. I'm 54 years old now. How many years I have left to be able to go out there and, you know, surfing's hard work, by the way. You know, it's a lot of work. It takes a lot of physical, a lot of upper body strength, takes a lot of wind, because paddling with waves going, it takes a lot. So I don't know how much longer I'm going to be able to do that, but my whole life is focused on doing it. Everything I do is around my joy. And that's not an easy thing to do. It would be a lot easier. It would have been a lot easier for me, you know, 6 or 7 years ago to just go and do what my wife told me she wanted me to do, my ex-wife. And I decided not to do that. So it's going to be difficult, but the point I'm trying to make is that it is important to stay connected to your emotions. If you're living your life in such a way where you're trying to distract yourself from your emotions, that is not helpful to you. Obviously, addictions, drug addiction, alcohol addiction, gambling, obsessions, work, money, all these things, if you're living in those things, indulging in those things, in order to avoid fear or pain or sadness or loneliness or guilt or inferiority or insecurity, if you're trying to avoid all those feelings, that's not helpful to you. You have to have all your feelings and experience them. Okay, so let me see here. Jordan Weissenberger says, again, just to let you guys know, the best way to interact with me is to leave a question. So I see there is no question here, but it did catch my eye anyway. So that's the best way to interact with me, because otherwise I might miss it. Jordan Weisenberger says, something you mentioned about an hour ago about living your purpose, whether you get rich or not. Sometimes it takes time to get good enough to make money. It's taken 3 years to make money at my purpose. So, so if I hear that right, what you're saying is that you have devoted your time and energy towards living your soul purpose, and that it's taken a while for that to turn into a moneymaker. And I completely agree. What I do know is that if you, that one of the main pitfalls is that people say, well, I would go after my soul desire, but I can't afford it right now, so I have to work this crappy job. I've seen that literally kill people. I've seen people avoid following their joy because they needed money, and they went off and did some job they couldn't stand. Now, again, I'm not talking about doing what you have to do. If you have to deliver pizzas or, you know, drive a taxi for a while you're building up money, while you're creating your business, go for it. I did all kinds of things like that in order to be able to do what I do and make money from it. And I'm now making a living from, you know, what I do. I ain't rich by any standard, anybody's standard, but I'm rich in the sense that I have everything that I need, and I'm really happy and healthy, and you know, I don't have the stress of having to go work for somebody else. I don't have to get up. I make my own schedule. I do what I want when I want. And I'm perfectly happy. The benefits I get from being able to sleep all day, if that's what I want to do, far outweigh whatever money I would get working some job I can't stand. Okay, so Jordan Weisberger says, I've heard of emotions being toxic and feelings being genuine. Is there a difference? Well, if I'm hearing you right, somebody has been very clever and made a distinction between emotions and feelings. And there are no such thing as, you know, they're just feelings. And some of them are pleasant and some are unpleasant. So feelings themselves are not toxic. What's toxic is the self-talk surrounding them. So let me see if I can find an example. So let's say somebody has insecurity. They feel insecure about themselves. Again, okay, let's just give it an example. Somebody's thinking about they want to become an artist. They grew up living in a family of realtors. So their family tells them, no, realty, you have to make money, you have to sell houses, you have to make yourself, to be a good person, you have to make money in this world, you have to sell realty, you have to own a bunch of land, and blah, blah, blah. That's what this person's been told all their life. But you know what? They can't stand realty, they hate sales, they can't stand walking through houses. They want to be an artist. This guy wants to sculpt. That's what he wants to do. That's what gives him joy. And his parents see no value in that, so they spent their whole life telling you, no, don't do that. When you tell you what, when you become a millionaire as a realtor, then if you want to become an artist, go ahead, but who cares? At that point, we won't care. And then the person goes out and tries to make $1 million as a realtor and is an utter dismal failure because they hate what they're doing. And the harder they try, the worse they are at it. So the person finally says, you know what, I'm just going to whatever, I'll live in a cardboard box and I want to be a sculptor. That's the only thing that makes me happy. Now they've got some really ugly feelings to deal with because they already feel insecure because they haven't seen themselves as being something of value because that's what they were taught. They now have fear because they don't have any money. Parents have said, well, you're on your own. We're not going to fund that. I now cut you off. You know, there's $1 billion in the trust fund and now it's ours. You don't get any, bye-bye. So now they have fear from a lack of money. So now they could easily indulge in the feeling, not so much the feeling, they could indulge in the belief that the universe has it in for them. They indulge in being a victim. That's not a feeling. That is a mindset. That is toxic. The feeling of being afraid, the feeling of being angry because you're not being supported by your family, the feeling of being sad because you've been rejected by your family, those feelings are not toxic at all. Those are just feelings. And we absolutely have to feel them. We have to. Because feelings are life force energy. Now, we don't necessarily want to take actions on those feelings. Because if you're angry, you don't want to take actions on getting revenge. You don't want to take actions on creating more victimhood in your life by indulging in feeling like a victim. If you're really sad and depressed, you don't want to, you know, again, lots of artists are alcoholics and drug addicts for this very reason. They're very emotionally sensitive and they're doing something that, you know, doesn't fit in with a lot of people's ideals of what you're supposed to be. And so they drink in order to stuff their feelings or to stuff the rage. You know, so feelings by themselves, no, I don't think they're toxic. There's nothing toxic about a feeling. What's toxic is the self-talk around it. So this is why I teach people that the first thing you should do, if you're new to my channel, go and watch the videos about whatever. I teach people shamanism, how to become your own shamanism teacher. I forget what I call that. Free apprenticeship or something like that. Go watch those videos, because the first thing that I tell you is that what you should do is, before you do anything else, is to adopt the assumption that the universe is only here to give you everything that you need so that you can be happy. Which means you adopt an attitude of trust. Trust is not a feeling. Trust is an action. You take a risk. You know, when I'm working with people in terms of personal relationships and there's trust issues, you know, invariably somebody will say, well, I would trust him or her if I knew that they weren't going to cheat on me again, or if I knew I could trust them. They have to earn my trust. And I said, it doesn't work like that. Trust isn't earned. Trust is a choice. Trust is when you don't know whether or not somebody is going to be faithful to you, and you give them your trust. The same thing is true with your relationship with the universe. Again, that's why I hammer on Celestial Qigong. Celestial Qigong, or Qigong in general, because when you do Qigong, I guarantee you, you will feel life force energy in your body, and you will have an easier time trusting that this web of this web of life force energy will give you everything that you need. You will feel the universe loving you. That's why I listen, there's nothing I teach that doesn't have a practical payoff. So go to qigong.thunderwizard.com if you want to learn more about that. Anyway, so I think I answered your question. It was a great question. Okay, so that's it for now. I don't have any more thoughts. I've been on for a while. I will take a short break here. When I come back, if there are questions, I'll take them. If not, I'll have some wise thing to say before we end this beautiful teaching for tonight. Okay, so let's see. Are there any questions? Nope, I don't see any more questions. So we'll go ahead and wrap this up for tonight. So, you know, I'm sitting here thinking as I'm getting ready to end this teaching for tonight. I'm sitting here thinking about, you know, the synchronicity, the coincidence that in this myth we are dealing with beings who are beings of life force energy. And I find it interesting, and now it makes perfect sense. You know, why is it that Allwise is talking with Thor? Why isn't he talking with Odin or Freyja or Balder? I mean, he could be talking with anybody. He's talking with the Lord of the mind, the Lord of life force energy. So this is a very human experience. Maybe I've been drawn to this because it really is about a human experience. And we cannot separate human beings from mind. Their name, Mann. In the Germanic original, Mann meant human being. And Man means moon, and it means mind. The moon is life force energy. It is the nurturing nectar of immortality. It's also wisdom, and it is also emotions. It's all of these things. And that is what we are. We are Man. We are moon. We are mind. Divine mind, reflection of the spirit. And that means that at our essence, we are life force energy. Dwarves are the purest form of human life force energy in emotional form. And here we have the protector of the mind, the protector of human beings, interacting and communicating with, at least in this sense, the one dwarf that has all the power. In this particular myth, we might as well just consider him the king of the dwarves. And so what we have is we have Thunar, the lord of the mind, the protector of human beings, the lord of life force energy, the ruler of life force energy, interacting with a being of pure life force energy. And as I said, Thor doesn't kill him. Thor talks to him and gets him talking. And so it's just so important that we be connected to our emotions. And if we want to be able to master our emotions, just as Thor in this myth mastered Allwise. He kept Allwise from doing an impulsive thing that would have been self-destructive. He kept him from doing it by communicating and interacting with him. So if you want to have power over your emotions, one of the benefits that you will get from that is the ability to master magic, the ability to intend and create your deepest desires. If we're talking about living from the integrity of the soul and to living your deepest desires of your soul and staying with your orlog, your destiny, your dharma, your life's purpose, you will need life force energy. You will need to be able to meditate. If you're one of those people, when you meditate, you can't focus because you have all these thoughts in your brain, one of the reasons that that's happening is because of a lack of life force energy. This is why yogis, people don't know this, people do go to these yoga classes. This is another one of those things that unless you know, unless you've trained in an actual source tradition, you don't know this. But all these storefronts of yoga classes, yoga was designed to do one thing. It was designed to prepare the body, to open the meridians so that you could meditate. And there are people that spend all this time doing yoga and don't meditate and don't do energy work. It's sort of like on your wedding night, having what's the word I want to use? It's like having foreplay and then just forgetting about the sex altogether. I mean, what's the point of that? Right? The foreplay is a lot of fun. It's really, really great, and it's there to get you ready for the big moment. Same thing with yoga. Yoga is designed to get the body ready. It's the foreplay of the body so that then the mind can meditate. Because without the meridians being open and without the life force energy flowing through it, your brain is going all over the place and you can't stop the crazy brain going on. So if you want that ability, I recommend doing Qigong. You can go onto my channel, thunderwizard.com YouTube channel, and look for the Qigong videos. There's playlists on there. If you really want to get the power of Thunar, of Thor, to be able to do what he did in this myth, then look for the Thuri Saj Rune Mudra meditation. I teach you a specific hand seal, which in and of itself is something that I wasn't supposed to reveal to the world. That's something that people spend thousands of dollars to learn from master, Taoist, whatever. But it's a really powerful mudra for life force energy. It's a very powerful mudra for meditation. Go look for that. If you want to be able to connect directly to the ancestral masters, one good way to do that is with celestial qigong. For that, go to qigong.thunderwizard.com. And why would I do that? What's the point of all that? Because then your dwarves will be empowered. Then you can master magic. Then you can master following your deepest desire. You know, as I've said before, you know, one of the problems I have with Western magic is that, again, Western magic, again, I'm speaking generally, so don't get your panties in a bunch if you're a Western magician. I'm just telling you from my perspective, having done multiple traditions. Western magic is something that was created in the Middle Ages after we were disconnected from our ancestral understanding, and it has a fundamental misunderstanding about your relationship to the universe. You are destined to become a god, but not by forcing your will onto the universe. People who force their will onto the universe are operating from a fundamental misconception that the universe isn't already there waiting to give you everything that you need. You work in a cooperative form. When you operate from the assumption that your soul knows exactly what you need in order to not only achieve your greatest happiness, but also achieve your highest divinity, to achieve godhood, then you're going to work in cooperation with your energy, and the universe is already, it sees, it can see into your soul, it sees already what it is that you want, and it's waiting to align itself with that. And the more that you take actions that will align you to that, the faster the universe jumps in. It's like it creates a gravity well, that the universe gets sucked right to you, and the energy gets sucked right to you to create that. So for that, life force energy in my experience is absolutely essential. Maybe that's just me. I'm built that way. I need it. Everybody, you know, is different. Maybe that's not the same for you, but that's what works for me. So anyway, I don't know what the heck I just said, but I think I'm done saying it for the time being. I'm about ready to sign off, unless there's any last minute questions here. Dive into Spirit 33 says, if you are very empathic by nature and are learning how to master the deep emotions you feel, could it be your dwarves connecting with you or trying to tell you something? Absolutely. See, everybody has dwarves, everybody has emotions, and everybody's dwarves are trying to communicate with them. Here's how it works. We have three selves. Higher self is a being that our soul is working with. It's a higher being that's on its way to becoming an elf, an ascended master. It is constantly receiving information from the realm of the ancestral masters, and it is there waiting to give us that information. That information goes directly to our dwarves, to our lower self. So it is our dwarves through our emotions and our intuition that communicates directly to us, which is the soul that lives in the middle here. This is how the threefold self communicates. So if you are empathic by nature, then that means you are able to tap into other people's dwarves. You are able to tap into other people's emotions. So that means you have a lower self that's obviously probably something that you've worked on for many, many lifetimes to be able to have that ability. So, you know, empathic meaning being able to feel other people's emotions, if that's what you're talking about. Yeah, absolutely, you are connecting to your dwarves. Everybody's connected to their dwarves, though. Whenever you meditate, you're connecting to your dwarves. Whenever you do energy work, you are feeding your dwarves. And when you feed your dwarves, they become happy. They don't want to cause problems. People who are addicted to alcohol, drugs, sex, gambling, these are people whose dwarves are hungry. They're not getting life force energy. So they're getting the next best thing, which is drugs, alcohol, sex, you know, all that kind of stuff. So again, life force energy, Qigong, will solve a lot of those problems, because once your dwarves have the mead, once they are drinking the mead, which is life force energy, they're happy, and then they want to do what they can to help you. Just like animals. When you feed your animals, they want to help you. Okay, Susie Yoten's wife says, do you think acupuncture is helpful to open meridians? Yes, I do think acupuncture is helpful. I think Qigong is better. It's sort of like vitamins versus food. When you need nourishment, you actually have to eat food. But if you're deficient in zinc or vitamin C, you can take vitamins. So acupuncture is like vitamins. Yeah, it's really helpful. It might even save your life. Just like, you know, if you have scurvy and you eat vitamin C, you can heal yourself with that. But acupuncture or acupressure or even lots of other things are not a replacement for actual Qigong. Now, I'm hammering away at Qigong, but you know what? Our ancestors used to do it instinctively. They did it through dance, they did it through breath, they did it through meditation, they did it through ritual. You know, you may not know this. You know, we think of sitting in full lotus as being something that only Eastern people do. Did you know that our Norse ancestors used to sit in full lotus? Used to meditate in full lotus? The reason why we know that is that we've seen this from artifacts that have been found from Viking burials, where next to the wands of the magic wands of the staff carrier women, the prophetesses, the seers, there was a bucket, and on the bucket was a brass figure of a man in full lotus meditating. Our ancestors did all this same stuff. This is the tragedy of the Middle Ages. When Christianity came in, it destroyed and took away all of our ancestral teachings. So Qigong was something our ancestors did. They might have had a different word for it. They might have had their own specific way of doing it. But trust me, they had their own practice as well. Okay, so that's it for me. I'm not seeing any questions here. All right, so that's it for now, my friends. Until next time, have all of your feelings. Feel all of your feelings. Experience all of your emotions. Only take actions that keep you aligned to your soul and your soul purpose. Be willing to die in order to live your deepest fantasies and your deepest joys, your deepest desires. The god Thor, the god of lightning and thunder, will protect you from going out of alignment. So worshiping him and connecting to the energy through life force and allowing yourself to have your feelings with that will help you to use your higher mind so that you can see things objectively and be able to take appropriate action to not only live out your most blissful fantasy of yourself, but also to give joy to others. When you follow your true path, the gods will be with you, the universe will be with you, and you will be a blessing to everyone in the universe. That's all I have to say for tonight. Thank you so much for allowing me to share this with you, and we'll see what happens. I'll see you guys soon. Have a great evening, and let's send some good energy to all of those people who are having to deal with the ravages of this hurricane that just went through. It's still going on. Let's send them our positive thoughts and good feelings. That's it. Thank you, my friends. Talk to you soon.